Welcome to Take It from the Ironwoman. My name is Susanne Mueller, your host and the Ironwoman. This podcast is about empowering yourself and others to make real changes in the world. You will hear from everyday, smart, sophisticated, hip people like you and me. Not everybody has to be an Ironwoman to impress the world. Together, we will learn from the sports and business leaders how you can become a more successful person as an entrepreneur or a leader. It's one step at a time, one day at a time. Take your steps now. Take your big steps now. Join me on this journey to success. Take it from the Ironwoman. Today, we go to Chennai in southern India and we hear Sushmitha, the yoga teacher. Welcome. Introduce yourself. Who is the Sushi Yoga? When I look at the Instagram, it's Sushi Yoga. I always feel I'm hungry. How did it all come about when we met? Probably more than 10 years ago.
Definitely more than 10 years ago. Thank you so much, Susanne. Really, it's such a kind extension of your podcast, and I'm super happy to be here. I'm a yoga teacher, but that's only part of what I do. It's just the part of me that shares what I've learned, what I've received. But a large part of me is still discovering the way in which I can share yoga with the world in a way that doesn't feel too pop yoga, too much dogmatic yoga. I'm trying to find just a voice in the yoga space. And there aren't actually enough South Indian voices in the space that are articulating the real goal of yoga, but at the same time, adapting to the modern times. My style of yoga is definitely rooted in ancient techniques that have been around for 5,000 years, but adapting it to times when we only maybe have 10, 15 minutes in the morning to get our nerve systems to be calm, centered, and then tackle the day. Really, that's what I do. The reason I say I'm not necessarily just a yoga teacher is because I think over time I've realized there's different grades of being even a teacher, which is like as a yoga instructor, a person you might meet at Pure Gym in anywhere, like a person who knows a sequence, who can teach you a sequence, and who can get you really fit from point A to point B. Then there's a teacher who sort of adds in the quality of yoga philosophy, for example, or teaches you something about yourself, mostly by pulling it out of you instead of giving you something like a set sequence, for example. I would say I'm not even a teacher, but I'm moving slowly towards, I'm still struggling to take on this label, but it's to be a leader in that space, a spiritual leader, someone who's not even trying to teach you a sequence, who's not even trying to like get you to self-improve your life or do something, but it's just kind of being. And through that being, people get affected by that vibration. People get affected to change their lives by just through observation and in emulating it. This is where I'm headed, but this is what I'm doing right now.
Let's be a little more. I know in the Western world, we all always rush. In New York City, we always say like, what's next? You don't have time for anything. I've taken many yoga classes there, but it's also timed. I remember there was once a yoga person and it felt more like a boot camp. I was like, I don't like this. I don't know. There was this nervous energy. How can we get away from that pop yoga or mindfulness yoga? How can we make it more sustainable?
That's a really good question, because this is what we see everywhere. In the biggest cities in the world, we see packed with yogis sweating inch by inch, just mats just lined up with each other, and not enough place for us to really reflect on the question of what is yoga? Is it meant to be this type of boot camp where we sweat so much and we feel good at the end of it? Or is there something deeper? That's the first question to ask. And the style of yoga that I practice is called Ashtanga Vinyasa. Traditionally, it was rooted in the sense that you do the practice on your own in absolute silence. There's nobody with a mic screaming at you, telling you to do this on no instruction. There's zero instruction. There's just the teacher who walks around, who is at this place of, I've done my practice. I'm going to be in my own center. I'm super aligned, walking around and silently, almost in a group setting, which offers us this sense of accountability. We feel good that other people are doing it. But at the same time, there's nobody guiding you except yourself and your own mind guiding you through the set sequence of postures. This is called Mysore style. And essentially, it's like a class in a group setting. I would say this is maybe the way forward, except a lot of people can't sit with themselves and do that. It is the most uncomfortable thing to guide yourself, to awaken the part of you that's your own teacher, you're the best teacher. Even if you go for a run, for example, you're the only one guiding you. There's usually you in your mind, and it's the track, that's it. In that same way, yoga moved towards this style of self-practice, giving the student more power and more agency to not be dependent on a class, not be dependent on a group, not be dependent on a teacher, or any of those external things, a nice Lululemon mat, anything, none of those. And just you and your mat. If you were given 30 minutes to an hour in the morning, what can you do with yourself? This is the question we must ask ourselves if we were to become less dependent on pop yoga. And it's the only way to extract out of the money-making machine, which is pop yoga. And I don't like to say it that way. It is, in fact, just a business model. It serves a purpose to get people in through the door of, let's say, okay, you're getting a lot of people to try yoga for the first time. It's harder to get people to do it on their own. But eventually, the real ones, the ones that are really doing the inner work, they don't want to keep you dependent on them for a really long time. They want to let you be. So then they can do their own inner work. It is ultimately a lonely, silent path. It takes patience.
It takes patience. You just said it. I'm a runner. When I go and run by myself, I love to run by myself. No music. I remember sometimes when I would go to the yoga studios, initially I would look around and then I was like, I was in my own world. I don't know. There was something at one point. There was a colleague of mine and we said, oh, we just went to the best yoga class. We didn't realize we were both in the same yoga studio. Maybe that's the good thing. We were focusing so much on ourselves and the yoga.
That's a really good sign. That's interiorization within the big group class. Yeah.
But then there is this balance to find. You also need to pay your bills. On one hand, we have about Lululemon, and we say we want to get away from this. But on the other hand, everybody has some bills to pay. How do we find that balance? And sometimes we think in India, oh, everybody just floats and does yoga all the time. I'm sure these days are over in India too. Like I know coffee or tea or ice cream is expensive too, right?
Absolutely. It's something that I ask myself every day. How can I make this authentic? It's an actual offering, but at the same time, not charge so much that nobody can afford it. At the same time, not keep it so low that it's just devalued in its real essence. My answers I've discovered range from these two things. Within India, like you said, it's a really saturated space. People charge anywhere between like less than $1 for a month of classes. They literally charge this as a trial thing. The competition, because there's such large companies, and in India, you can generate the numbers to keep the prices so low that it becomes a question of if you're an individual yoga teacher that's just trying to do it on your own, it's impossible to compete with that. I try not to compete with that. I say that's actually a different quality of yoga that they're offering. It's also a very yoga instructor model. Like it's very much based on, I'm going to teach you something that's probably going to get you fit. Maybe not. Maybe it's just going to, I don't know, get you to do something at a certain period of time. So I don't even know what it does. But that level of yoga, I try my best not to even compete with. If I did price it so low and go that route, I wouldn't be able to sustain myself. At the same time, we're seeing a movement towards super high-end wellness retreats in 7-star hotels. It's become a luxury experience for many parts of society that can afford it. You can see that even for let's say a 2-night retreat, it would be a couple $1,000s in really nice resorts. These are the two extremes of what exists out there. For me, what I've discovered is always going to be people that find serious, real value in the true form of yoga. There's never going to be a lack of people that will say, oh, I don't need yoga anymore. That's something that really gives me the confidence that this is a long-term game. It's not me trying to get in a few people into a course or into a single workshop. So I try my best not to look at it in that numbers sense of let's just get this number of people to get this outcome. Because I feel when I meet, whenever I'm traveling, whoever I meet, I feel like it's such a vast toolkit that if you're an executive, if you're an athlete, if you're anybody, you can get something out of this huge toolbox. I try my best just to kind of make that link for them. Then they discover it on their own. I feel if they make that link deeply and they say, oh, this is really valuable to me, then they're willing to pay a good amount of money over a long period of time to find and rediscover the value. If I say something like, okay, come to just this one retreat and then you'll solve all of your problems, that's not sustainable for anybody. And they're probably not going to get what they want because you're never going to see the value of yoga in just one retreat. At the same time, if you're pricing it so low that you have so many number of people in your class, you don't really energetically see how you can affect them, it doesn't work either. I'm trying my best just to help people really feel the value of yoga. Then they say, you have the agency to really say, okay, I'm going to either work with you over a period of 1 year or 2 years to discover how it will benefit me. And then the only thing you're offering is, oh, this was valuable. That's it. That's how I make sure that it's sustainable financially. I don't limit myself to Indian clients or people within my local community, which has also been it's been helpful for me because I feel a lot of people find value in Indian yoga, specifically because it feels a little more real, it feels a bit more authentic. A large part of my client base is international, and that has helped. One, help me share it in an authentic way, speaking in Sanskrit, whatever it may be. There's zero, they really take it on and they try to find value in it. The second thing is, when I do teach Indian students and I do teach within India, I try my best just to help people, even if I price it super low, I try my best to help people realize why it's only useful if they do it long term and then make a way that they can do it long term.
That's really nice. You mentioned global and you've traveled.
When I was 23, I called up, I went on Yoga Trade. Yoga Trade is a little bit Upwork, or it's like a work exchange thing for yoga teachers, basically. I found this place called Yoga for Wellness Africa in Tanzania. It's an organization, and they were doing a bit of both for-profit stuff, NGO stuff. I really liked that model because on the one hand, I really wanted to give back, but on the other hand, you have to sustain yourself and also make that loop really sustainable for you. When I went, I called her up and I was, okay, I looked at your profile. I really like it. She was, oh, why don't you come head this project in 2 months from now? I was, you spoke to me for 10 minutes. How is that even possible? But it just so happened that it was maybe perhaps the best decision that I made back then. I just showed up in Dar es Salaam, 23 years old, fresh out of my second yoga training. And I was just ready and I did everything. I did mindfulness training for kids. I used this Muse brain sensing headband to see attention fluctuation in kindergartners. I taught at really fancy places with a pool and everything. I did everything across the board just to throw myself into different situations where I'd have to find that same link. How can yoga be useful for this demographic? Because I was actually able to interact with these different demographics, it helped me realize, oh, regardless of where I travel, it's even beyond language. I would be in Salamagashia, which is zero English speaking, pure Swahili, and I'm using my body to teach. So it's, again, I've picked a really sacred work in that way because it's beyond words. It's beyond the imperfections of language even, because it's so embodied. In that way, I've just been traveling a lot, East Africa. Now I'm going to South Africa, adding it into a little tour. And I've been going back every single year, just building this. I've also traveled in other places in Southeast Asia and so on. The more work I do, the more time I want to spend in these places, really rooting down in their culture, understanding, and spending many months together just working on the same link. Demographic, how is yoga useful for them?
So then what is your favorite spot?
I would have to say Tanzania. Just because it's got blue waters. It's just people are so warm-hearted. It's got such a grounded energy. And it's one of those places that not a lot of people go to. You would see people going to Bali or Costa Rica, whatever, for yoga. But I feel the more we get yoga to places where yoga doesn't exist in the way that we see it, the less those places will feel like the actual yogi places are so saturated by confusingly a number of people that you're like, let's go to a place that doesn't have so many yogis, so to speak, and offer something of real value in those places. I would definitely say Tanzania.
Sushi sounds so funny. Is that sushi with the food related?
Actually, I wanted my name to rhyme. So I was Sushi and Yogi rhymes. Sushi, my name is Sushmitha, and people used to call me Sushi, like as a nickname. And then it rhymed with Yogi. So I put Sushi and Yogi in front. It's not got to do with the food, but I actually really love sushi. really, really love sushi.
That was my last question. What is your favorite food?
I've always been vegetarian since I was a small child. So it was never like I needed to exclude anything from my diet. Interestingly, though, I feel after I've been doing a really strong yoga practice, I just feel less hungry in that sense because there's more prana or life force in the body. I don't feel as much craving to eat junk food. I don't feel as much craving to even eat something outside my diet that feels unnatural. I never had to make that switch between cutting out certain types of food. I was just always this way. And of course, I take a few key Ayurveda supplements for my own body just to keep it even more healthy and functioning. But it's also a simplification of the diet to make it more streamlined, to say, what is the most effective way to have energy for the rest of the day? What can I eat so that I don't feel tired at the end of the day? And answering that question is just eat South Indian food. Eat Indian food. It's that simple. It's what the yogis that ate long ago. It's what works today. Maybe you take a few supplements and add a few things in, but I just keep it as simple as possible with the diet.
Wonderful. What's next?
In about a week or so, I'm going to go to London and then back to Dar es Salaam. And then I'm going to teach at this floating yoga studio in South Africa, which I'm very, very excited about. Then I'll be back in Chennai to do a few workshops. Then I spend 4 months of the year being just a student, studying for myself. So it's usually like this, a period of lots of traveling and then a period of being a complete student and then some time for creation and content creation. My life just cycles through these different phases. And I feel that has helped me really categorize my priorities for given like 3-4 months. Then I switch my priority into a different 3-4 months. If I'm teaching, I'm really teaching a lot. And if I'm not teaching at all, then I'm just doing my own practice and happy to be a student and not teach at all. I'm lucky that I get to do this, live this type of lifestyle that's nomadic.
Okay. Enjoy the floating yoga. Thank you so much and safe travels.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
What is your yoga practice? Take it from the Ironwoman. You have episodes every Monday with interesting people from around the world with interesting stories. And Take It from the Ironwoman is also a book, Global Business Coaching with Sports Parallels. We'll see you next time. Thank you for your support.